Hello, class. Today we're going to talk about the last of our content theories, which is Hertzberg's two-factor theory. Now, this theory has pretty much fallen off the radar in terms of motivational theories, and a lot of what Hertzberg talked about really could not be empirically backed by the research. So, in the context of today's motivational theories, it's really not something that's referenced all that often. However, I do think it has a lot of salient points. I think there's a lot of acute observations that were made by Hertzberg that were different than anybody else was thinking at the time. And I also think it led to different thinkings in the ways we looked at some of the motivational theories and job satisfaction and things like that. So really quickly, we'll go over Hertzberg's two-factor theory of motivation, and some of the tenets and really the underlying guideline for what the theory says. So again, this is a content theory of motivation, and what makes Hertzberg's theory unique? Now we're talking about a two-factor theory. So when you think about Hertzberg, think two-factor. What are the factors? The first factor is a hygiene factor. The next factor is a motivator. Okay, so when we're talking about Hertzberg's two-factor theory, we're talking about hygiene factors and we're talking about motivators. And Hertzberg had a unique way of looking at job satisfaction or employee satisfaction. For the most part, we think about these things on a continuum. And you hear me talk about continuums. All a continuum is we're going to fall somewhere along the continuum. When we talked about extroversion versus introversion, we're falling somewhere along this continuum. When we talked about some of the big five personality traits, when we talked about some of the psych-cap measurements, we were falling somewhere along a continuum with efficacy and optimism and resilience. So for the most part, we viewed job satisfaction as this continuum, this one single continuum where an employee was either dissatisfied on this end or then had some degree of satisfaction leading up to complete job satisfaction on this side. Hertzberg didn't see it that way. Hertzberg saw it as two separate, distinct things. So instead of one continuum, he saw two distinct factors. And on the one he had dissatisfaction or dissatisfied, all to the other side, which was not dissatisfied. Okay, so again, we're not going from dissatisfied to satisfied. We're going from dissatisfied to not dissatisfied. So what the hard part to digest here is not dissatisfied doesn't necessarily mean satisfied. Right? Not dissatisfied means just that. I'm not dissatisfied with work. Maybe I'm not satisfied with work, but I'm not dissatisfied. And the way to think about that is, let's say you go into work tomorrow, and the place where you work is 32 degrees. They don't put the heat on. It's freezing. You're cold. You have to wear a coat. You're shivering. I'm going to bet that you're dissatisfied. The next day you come in, the heat turned up at 72 degrees. It's comfortable. It doesn't mean that you're satisfied now and you're going to be motivated to do your job. All it really means is, all right, I'm not dissatisfied anymore. I was dissatisfied yesterday. Today, I'm not dissatisfied. And what Hertzberg posited was that it was the hygiene factors that contributed to whether an employee was dissatisfied or not dissatisfied. Okay, it was the hygiene factor. So of the two factors, the hygiene factors determined dissatisfaction or non-dissatisfaction. Well, what are some of the hygiene factors that Hertzberg talked about? Well, one was work conditions, right? If I'm working in poor conditions, I would tend to be dissatisfied over not dissatisfied. Relationships with my supervisor, relationships with fellow employees would lead to dissatisfaction or non-dissatisfaction. Another interesting one was pay. Now again, think about his other factors. The other factors are motivating factors, right? So we're talking about these things that are leading to either dissatisfaction or non-dissatisfaction. And he speculated that pay was one of those hygiene factors that made a worker either dissatisfied or not dissatisfied. A lot of people up to this point were saying no, or would speculate that pay was a motivator. Pay is the thing that motivates people. But we talked about last time with Desi Ryan, and even this time with Hertzberg, pay he is viewing as a hygiene factor, as something that's just going to take away dissatisfaction. The other factor, so with the hygiene factors, the other set of factors are motivators. And motivators lead to job satisfaction, according to Hertzberg, and this increased performance, and all those things that go along with job satisfaction. So what are some of the motivating factors that Hertzberg talked about? He talked about recognition. And throughout this entire chapter, we've talked about the importance of recognition in terms of competence, in terms of self-efficacy. So you can see that all these theories are tying together in some way. We're all talking about the same thing in essence, but maybe putting a little different spin on it. So Hertzberg looked at a motivating factor to be recognition, being recognized for your work, getting positive feedback. Achievement, being able to do your work. Again, that ties back to competence with Desi Ryan. Being able to do your work, being successful at your work, having a sense of pride. And advancement. Do I have opportunities to learn, to grow, to get ahead in this company? Those are all things that he speculated were motivators that led to the second line, the second area of job satisfaction. So that's really Hertzberg's theory, and then here's some applications of that. Of the theory, and again, tying into what we've said, they're all about the same, right? So let's focus on some things to move away from having a dissatisfied workers. Let's look at those things like conditions in relationships, but also let's look at those things that are really going to motivate our employees: the recognition, the achievement, the chance for advancement, the chance to learn and grow as a human being. So a lot of strong tenets are associated with this, with the two-factor theory, and again. The research really didn't support some of the items that Hertzberg talked about, leading to job satisfaction and leading to job performance per se. But as you can imagine, the theory has some good tenets. It to me, it makes sense, and it may not have the empirical background to reinforce it, but removing dissatisfiers while trying to motivate employees is a pretty strong foundation for motivation theories.